I get to follow that. All right. Thank you, worship team. Sincerely felt like I could have just kept worshiping this morning, but somebody had to get up and do this. So here we go. All right. Hey, if you're new, welcome. My name is Neigenfind. I have the privilege of serving as one of the pastors here at EAC, and we just launched a new series last week entitled Words of Wisdom, where we're looking at major themes in the book of Proverbs, and we are looking at a very foundational theme today, and we're starting in verse 1 of chapter 1. So if you have your Bible, feel free to open there. And here's how the book of Proverbs begins. These are the Proverbs of Solomon, David's son, king of Israel. If you didn't know, these are not new. All right, they've been around for a bit. They're pretty old. Here's their purpose. Their purpose is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Their purpose is to teach people to live disciplined and successful lives, to help them do what is right, just, and fair. These proverbs will give insight to the simple, knowledge and discernment to the young. Let the wise listen to these proverbs and become even wiser. Let those with understanding receive guidance by exploring the meaning in these proverbs and parables, the words of the wise and their riddles. So up to this point, we're dealing with introductory substance, and what's happening is they're laying a foundation of what and who the Proverbs are for. And so you're getting kind of this picture. Hey, if you want to be wise, the book of Proverbs is for you. If you want to lead a disciplined and productive life, the book of Proverbs is for you. If you want to have understanding, the book of Proverbs is for you. If you want to be successful, you want to level up, the book of Proverbs is for you. If you're young and you're in the room this morning and you're like, I want to figure out how to live my life and live it well, saying, the book of Proverbs is for you. If you're older and you got some wisdom under your belt, maybe even other people come to you for your wisdom, but you realize, I haven't arrived. There's room to grow. Saying the book of Proverbs is for you. So no one's left out here except for one individual, the person who does not care about wisdom. They just want to pursue their passions and pleasures. They don't really care about the long-term effect of their choices or the path that they're going to take in the various areas of their lives. If that's you and you're just completely unconcerned and you're only living for today, this series is going to be terrible. You're not going to like it. Feel free not to even come. It's a waste of your time. But if you're like, I want wisdom, I want to know the right paths to take in various areas of my life. I'm young and I want to know, what should I base my life on? I'm older and I have some wisdom, but I still don't have everything figured out and I want to grow in wisdom. Well, it's saying this is for you. And where we are finding ourselves today is at the very beginning of a journey for wisdom, because the pursuit of wisdom really is a journey. And it's even sort of implied in that introduction when it's talking about, hey, older people who are already wise, or they don't even have to be old, but they could have wisdom. It's like there's more wisdom to get. It's this journey. It's not like this have or have nots per se. It's sort of this spectrum of wisdom. And if you're on the journey, you're pursuing that, but there is a starting place for all wisdom according to the Bible. And we get there in verse 7. Okay, in verse 7, and I want us to read this together. Let's read it together. We're going to read it twice, okay, because really we're spending the whole morning unpacking this. Here we go. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. One more time. The fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. Other translations might say that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, or the beginning maybe of knowledge. And it's this idea that it is the starting place, it is the beginning, but I like the word that the New Living Translation uses here in saying that it is the foundation. The foundation is the thing upon which everything else is built. Everything comes up from the foundation. Let's go to the next slide. Who likes pizza in the room? Pizza fans? Yeah, it's football season. It's pizza time, right? It's winter. It's time to put on some calories, people. Beach body season, that's a thing of the past. It's pizza time. All right, so stand up really quick. All right, everyone, if you're able, would you please stand up? And here's what we're going to do, all right? And don't start until I give you the instructions. Well, in a second, I want you just to say hey to somebody you didn't come with this morning. Just quick, hi. If you don't know their name, tell them your name. And then ask them what their favorite pizza toppings are and sit down. All right? That's it. All right. We were ready for that conversation. Feel free to grab a seat. Any fringe toppings out there? Like any anchovy people in the house? Couple anchovy people? Any pineapple people? Feta cheese and olive pizza? All right. The guy I was talking to, his favorite pizza is barbecue sauce with pulled pork on top. So there you go. That's this guy right here. Yeah, let's give it up for him. Barbecue. That's bold, brother. That's bold. All right. So here's the thing, all right? When you think about pizza, I saw Josh McGinnis in the lobby earlier today. If you don't know Josh, say hi to Josh. Nice dude. He works at Domino's, okay? And his job at Domino's is he makes the pizza crust and then he sends it down the line for the other people to put all the other stuff on. But here's the thing. If Josh doesn't do his job, if he doesn't make the pizza crust, there is no pizza. I mean, you can throw barbecue sauce on a metal sheet and some pulled pork and it would come through and you're like, this isn't pizza. You can throw anchovies on, but if you don't have the crust, then there is no foundation and there is no pizza. Now, maybe I'm taking this analogy too far. Try to hang with me. All right, there was coffee in the lobby, so I can expect more out of you. Here's the thing. You might encounter, because we're going to be in this series, Lord willing, talking about a variety of very practical topics. We're going to be talking about money and sex and parenting and what it's like for kids to function in the home kind of thing. And so we're going to be diving into very particular subjects and almost think of those as the toppings that you want on your pizza. And here's what I would say is that there might be people in your life and in your world, and they don't even believe in God at all. And maybe in a particular area, they do show some wisdom. So in the analogy, it's like they do have like the pepperoni or the cheese. Like maybe they're awesome with money, but what we'd say is they haven't got there by building up from the foundation. Maybe they got there despite that, but if you want the complete package, you want the whole deal, you don't want just some toppings on a plate, you gotta start at the foundation and build up. And so that is the way in which the book of Proverbs is sort of setting the stage for us is before we get into specific topics that really do matter and really do have implications for your life, we need to get the crust going. We need to set it. And it's this idea of the fear of the Lord, the fear of the Lord. And what we're going to look at is I don't want to skip past. Here's what we need to do. We need to first examine what does the fear of the Lord actually mean? Because I can say that, like we need to fear the Lord, and we could just leave here and be in a lot of just different opinions on what that means. So I'm gonna make an attempt at bringing clarity to what that actually means. But then in addition to that, it has to land in the practical realm as well, where you and I leave here today, and there's this concrete idea of what does this actually look like for me to walk a path where the fear of the Lord is present and foundational to my life? And so what I want to not rush by is this idea of fear. I need to unpack it, but as we'll get to momentarily, the Hebrew word for fear can that we've translated fear in our Bibles, it can pack more than what we hear in English. And so I think we need to do a little bit of theological work here. But I don't want to move past the idea of fear so quickly that we minimize sort of the broadness of this word. And so let's start with this understanding of fear. And I want to look at Isaiah chapter 6, verses 1-7, okay? And here's sort of the heart a little bit behind this, is that I think there is a tendency in Western Christianity to sort of minimize the greatness of God, the power of God, and the fact that there are elements of God that if you were to encounter it, it would feel terrifying as it's presented in the Bible because of his majesty and because of his power, the fact that he is the one who has the right to judge. Like there's so many components of God. And I think there's been a tendency in Western Christianity at times to make Jesus and God the Father so much more palatable and like so much more approachable that we almost don't do justice to the majesty of God as presented in the Bible. Does that make sense? So I grew up in an era, and I don't think this is like really a thing anymore, but I remember when I was in about maybe middle school, there were these shirts that were popular, and it would have like a picture of Jesus, and it would say, "Jesus is my homeboy." You've seen these? Anybody seen these shirts? All right. And it would just say, "Jesus is my homeboy." And it was like kind of like youth group shirts. It was normally Christians who'd wear them. And while I do believe that Jesus says, "I now call you friends," and that is a very real component of the biblical understanding of our relationship with God, that's one-dimensional. And there's also this element of Jesus is my Lord, to whom I'm committing my life to, the one that we believe gave everything for us, and he is worthy of worship. And I think there is a very real sense in which, as we study the Bible and you look at it, when people are like sort of face to face with the power and the presence of God, even angels, which is less than God, what you find is people, their initial reaction is fear. And then what we find is that God will also give us this admonition of fear not, do not be afraid. But let's look at Isaiah, who was probably far holier than me and far holier than you. And look at what happens to Isaiah as recorded in Isaiah 6. It was in the year King Uzziah died. So he's like grounding this in history. He's not just saying this is some random thing, that I saw the Lord. He was sitting on a lofty throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Attending him were mighty seraphim, angels, each having 6 wings. With 2 wings, they covered their faces. With 2, they covered their feet. And with 2, they flew. They were calling out to each other, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of heaven's armies. The whole earth is filled with his glory. So Isaiah is saying, I saw this, and he's like, the angels are shielding their eyes in the presence of God. And they're just shouting, and they're just declaring, holy, holy, holy. Not, you're my homeboy. The holy, holy, holy. The whole earth is filled with his glory. The voices shook the temple to its foundations, and the entire building was filled with smoke. And look at Isaiah's reaction. He goes, then I said, it's all over. I am doomed. For I am a sinful man, I have filthy lips, and I live among a people with filthy lips, yet I have seen the King, the Lord of heaven's armies. Isaiah, I think here is saying, I'm going to die. Like, I am so unworthy to be in the presence of this majestic God. Like, he is fearing for his life. And then this is what happens next, and this is where we need to have balanced theology. Then one of the seraphim flew to me with a burning coal he had taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. He touched my lips with it and said, see, this coal has touched your lips. Now your guilt is removed and your sins are forgiven. It's like sort of this, look, there's grace extended to you, and now you can be in the presence of God. And then later, even in different contexts, but in Isaiah 41:10, it says, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I'll help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. So you do have this very real, like God telling people not to fear in the scriptures, but understand there's also this element where I think if God were to reveal his glory in this moment, all of us would be terrified. Do you understand this? But the Hebrew word for fear can unpack more meaning. So the Hebrew word is yira. Yira, say yira. And if you do some research on this Hebrew word, you will likely find that it also can have this idea of reverence and respect, okay? So when you're doing translation work, there's not often just like from Hebrew, there can be a lot of meaning packed into a Hebrew word, and then in English, we're like, well, what's the best word for us to put? But oftentimes the best word doesn't do the word justice, and I think that would be the case here, because the yira, it can also have this sense of awe, this sense of reverence, this sense of respect. My former professor at Moody Bible Institute, Dr. Finkbeiner, in a commentary wrote this. He says, the fear of the Lord is a reverential awe toward him. It involves taking him seriously, both fearing his just judgment and holding him in the highest respect and love. The Life Application Study Bible would say it like this, that the foundation of knowledge is the fear of the Lord, to honor and respect God, to live in awe of his power, and to obey his word. So the question then becomes, if the fear of God has this sort of understanding of living in awe of his power and this sort of commitment to obey his word, what does that look like practically? What does it look like for us to fear the Lord? And here's what I would say to you. That the fear of the Lord, as I understand the Bible, is not so much a feeling as it is a posture. That it's not so much a feeling. So I'm not saying, everybody, be scared. Feel a sense of awe right now. Do it. You can't, right? Neither can I. Can't just feel a sense of awe, but I can alter my posture in regards to how I live my life. Let me say it like this. Here's what I believe. The genuine fear of the Lord results in a posture of humility that expresses itself in faithful obedience, believing that God's way is the best way. Does that help? The genuine fear of the Lord, like if this is real for you, because we're wanting this not to just be in the philosophical, but in the practical. And so if you're like, how do I know if I'm fearing God? How do I know if this is true of my life? How do I know if I have this as the foundation of my life? Is this true of you? Has genuine fear of the Lord resulted in a posture of humility that expresses itself in faithful obedience, believing that God's way is the best way? So again, we're not on specific subjects yet. We start those kind of next week, where we start looking at specific subjects. And right now we're at the foundation. We're saying this is where it starts. And we're talking about your posture in faith of what is your posture as you think about God. And that's what we're wrestling with this morning, and realizing this, that the God of the Bible is presented as ultimately wise and ultimately good and ultimately loving, and that it would be completely foolish to not trust him completely, right? So here is a verse that many of you are familiar with. It's sort of the coffee cup Proverbs verse. Maybe when you think of Proverbs, this is the verse that comes to mind. And I think it's really relevant to our time together this morning. Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. Look at that first sentence. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Now, to me, there could be a period there and that sentence just be over, because the second part seems like it could just be implied by the first part. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Why do you think the text goes the extra mile in this context to say, do not depend on your own understanding? Let me take a stab at it and lean in, because I think this is so important for anyone in the room who's saying, I want to be a follower of Jesus. This is so important. I think it's freeing, in fact. What is very implied by verse 5 is that your understanding will at times be at odds with God's understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. First part. Second part, do not depend on your own understanding. Why say do not depend on your own understanding? Because it is very likely that your understanding and my understanding will not be the same as the Lord's. And that does not make you a bad Christian. That makes you human. But Proverbs at the get-go is saying, when your understanding contradicts God's understanding as revealed to you, you need to trust in the Lord with all of your heart and go with his understanding. Why is this so important on the onset of our series? It's important on the onset of discipleship in general. But as it relates to this series, we're gonna be dealing with very practical issues that can invade your life, I think, in an extremely positive way. So we believe that everything that God has for us is good, that his way is the best way, that his way is the right way. Jesus even said, I came so that they may have life and have it to the full, that Jesus is not trying to cramp your style. We don't believe that. We believe that God wants what's best for you and that he knows what's best for you. But here's the thing, and the scriptures don't shy away from this. There's going to be times where we read something and we say to ourselves, listen, Christians, we read something, whether you're reading through Proverbs on your own. But how many of you, have I already asked? How many of you have started reading Proverbs? Good. Keep doing it. All right. If you haven't, start. We're trying to read through it on your own. But how many times are you going to, in your personal time, in our time here collectively together, encounter something in the Bible and say to yourself, or say even honestly to your community, I don't like that. Can I tell you something as your pastor? There are things in here that are not my favorite. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? But do you know what I believe about what's in here? I believe it's right. And I believe it's good. And I believe that when I encounter things that mess with my perspective or my opinions or my predispositions on a given subject, that I am the one who needs to pivot and not God, right? So if I encounter something in here about money and I go, I don't like that, who needs to move, me or God? I mean, this is seriously something that we need to wrestle with as followers of Jesus. There's something in here about sexuality and we go, I don't like that. It doesn't suit my 2023 mindset and it's not gonna be popular at work and et cetera. Now, listen, as sort of a caveat, there might be things that we disagree on as people of faith as it relates to interpretation of this text. And I want you to know that there is space for that. That even here, please understand, I do not think my interpretation is infallible. There are going to be things that I get wrong. And so there can be space in Christian community for differences as it relates to, I see that differently. Some of you have convictions on stuff. I don't think Christians should do this, this, and this. And the person sitting next to you goes, I think it's totally fine for Christians to do that. But where there's freedom to, as it relates to our interpretation, and we should wrestle through that in community, not just in isolation. Where there is not freedom is as it relates to your posture. Because if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, he is Lord. And so while we might not get everything right that he said and might understand things differently, the posture for anyone who's gonna call themselves a follower of Jesus, hear this. This is like Christianity 101. If Jesus is Lord, your posture is this. It's submission out of love and reverence and deference to Jesus, believing he knows what's best and he has my best interest in mind at heart and he knows the best path to life anyways. And even if he says stuff that doesn't make sense to me, I'm going with what he says because I believe he's right. I believe he's good, even when my brain says, I don't know if I like that very much. And so the posture for every follower of Jesus needs to be this. What Jesus says goes. Jesus even goes, why do you call me Lord and not do what I say? You remember that? He said that. He goes, why do you call me Lord and don't do what I say? I think we're in this moment in Christianity. It's interesting. The late Tim Keller was talking about this. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the Christian position and worldview is increasingly being marginalized in our culture. And I'm not saying that to fire you up or get you angry. I'm just looking at data. But here's what Tim Keller said by way of research as he understood it, is he goes, actually, there has been no decline as it relates to committed Christians in the United States. He says what's happened is actually the people who were nominal Christians have left because they would just identify as Christian, but they weren't really committed to following Jesus. And as the cultural pressure on Christianity has become stronger, basically the people who weren't committed to Jesus and just said, I'm a Christian because we were culturally Christian, et cetera, those people have left, and it actually hasn't been a decline among committed followers of Jesus, but we don't have that covering of nominal anymore where we're sort of in the majority, and so we look weirder than we have in a long time. Does that make sense? But whereas there's actually not less of us, we just lost a lot of the fat. And so now there's like the Jesus people increasingly that are left, and this is going to continue to be a trend, I believe, as the society is getting less friendly to Christians. Again, I'm not saying this to fire you up. I actually think this could be very good for the church. I think this could have a beautiful purifying effect on us. So another conversation maybe for another day. But what we're seeing now is that those of us who are sort of remaining in a moment where it's less popular to hold a Christian perspective, we're saying, hey, Jesus is Lord. And he's not just Savior, he's Lord. And we're gonna follow him. Are we gonna follow him imperfectly? Yes. Are we gonna make mistakes along the road? Yes. Are we gonna have disagreements even amongst ourselves in church on what following Jesus looks like exactly? Yes. Please have grace to one another. But where we wanna spur one another on, I believe, is that this foundational thing of let's love him. Let's fear him in the right kind of sense, because I do believe at the same time, while there's so much majesty and so much stuff to fear, I think Jesus invites us in and he says, fear not. But that doesn't mean we don't have this deep awe of who he is and recognizing, man, if we were in his presence, I don't know if we'd be able to even stand, you know? And so as we wrap up this time, I'm gonna invite the band back out to come and play. I just want to invite those of you who are able again to stand, and I want us to read Proverbs 1:7 again as we lay the foundation for the series, and as we, I hope, lay the foundation for our lives. Can we read this one more time together? The fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. May you be wise, Edgewater Alliance Church. I love you. Let's stand and sing.